From Sigma Woman, this is the Business for Aligned Women podcast. I'm your host, Clara McKay, your aligned business coach and advocate for all things showing up for your vision. This is a no BS space for brave-hearted women who are actually craving change. I'm dedicated to bringing women's visions into reality, equipping women with all they need to build an abundant future, and shutting down all of the ways that you keep yourself small. Here, we're all about a women-centered approach, non-negotiable value alignment, and making bank without compromising your well-being. Each week, you're already one step closer to your most aligned and abundant future. Welcome to this week's episode. We're going to be talking all things brand alignment, brand strategy, visual branding, why you need to have a brand, why you should care about having a brand, even if you're a small business, even if you're just getting started. And we're going to be doing that with an amazing client of mine, Dorina Horvath. She is the founder of Studio Roams. She's a graphic designer, brand strategist, brand mentor, and UX designer. And she has a huge wealth of knowledge when it comes to all things brand. We're talking about why it's important to have a strategic brand, even if you're small or getting started, what an aligned brand actually is. And the thing that I have covered a million times, but will continue to keep covering, is why DIY branding is costing you tons more money than you think, and significantly more money than it would cost for you to resolve it. I see that issue all the time, and it's a tough one because it's something that I clearly communicate, but people often don't pick up. And yet it's that 20% of extra effort that is required to go so much further. And it's sad to see people not pick up that extra 20%, that last 20%, and then struggle to kind of make the progress and the success that they want to be having. We're going to be talking about all of that with Dorina. If you'd like to check her out or anything that we talk about in today's episode, it will be linked in the show notes. Before we get into that episode, I want to invite you to something really special. It's a new free offer. It is a seasonal book club for women. It's mainly going to be about self-work, the emotional stuff, the self-growth, the self-development work that we need to be doing in order to be good business owners. And the first book that we are reading over the next 3 months is The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. This book is all about self-sabotage and how it's limiting you or holding you back. It's a bit of a kick in the butt to stop playing small. If you would like to join the book club, there is a link in the show notes as well. One other freebie that I want to share with you before we get into today's episode is I have come up with a podcast planning guide. It's a really short, really clear little guide. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, these are just some things that you need to go through. And that, of course, is a beautiful little taster of my Podcast Equals Profit training. And that is a training that is live and available right now. We have live calls at the end of each month for the next 3 months, but it's entirely self-led. So you could start it today and be working on your podcast in the next couple of weeks. In that training, I go through what makes a podcast likely to make money and all the little things that you need to work out and work on and really excavate and unearth before you can actually even hit play on your first episode in order to make sure that it's going to do exactly what you want it to do. That training will be linked in the show notes as well. If you have any questions about that training, always feel free to reach out. But for now, we're going to move into our interview with Dorina. I want to drop some of her credentials so that you know who we're talking to. So she's a UX designer and she's been doing this for 10 years and she's worked for big companies like Xero, Woolworths, Agoda, leading their international design teams. She has then transitioned to working more with startups and doing branding, web, and product design. And she has started an agency to work with ambitious women entrepreneurs like yourself. It was so wonderful to work with her. And I just can't wait to get into this really deep, really succinct conversation about why you need to be thinking about brand in your business. Dorina, thank you so much for being here today. I would love for us to start with getting you to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe talk through your highest personal values.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Dorena. I live in Sydney with my partner and I have two little kittens, but I moved here from Hungary like 6 years ago to Australia. So that's my background. And my highest personal values are freedom, aesthetics, and growth. And that's really reflected in my life and in my business as well. That's basically why it was so important for me to start my own business, especially anchoring into the freedom part, because that's always been the most important driving factor in my life and everything I do as well.
Yeah, that looking for that spaciousness in your day and the ability to choose what you want to do throughout your day and your week.
Yes, exactly. Just creating your own schedule, living life your own way, living wherever you want to live. That's super important for me.
Oh, I love it. And I love your little kittens. I think it's cool as well for some of our listeners to hear you say that one of your highest values is aesthetics. That is part of one of my highest values as well.
Mm.
And when I work with women, they often don't want to pick a value that is as specific as that. And there's so commonly people's values are all altruistic, giving based, selfless values. And to choose something like aesthetics really shows that you know yourself very well.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely had to do some work around that as well. Because at first I was just like, oh, aesthetics, like, can I really say that? Is that really it? Like, is that a bit shallow? But when it really comes down to it, like, it is true to me and it is important for me. So I have to own that.
Yeah, and I can see that in your content and the work that you do. Just before we go on to the next question, I would love if you could share any ways that deciding that aesthetics was one of your highest values, how has that shifted things for you?
I think it just shifted more in my personal life. I really prioritize where I live, what I surround myself with, and that just created so much more space for me to be more creative as well. Because I found that when my aesthetics, my surroundings are beautiful, then the creativity flows a lot easier for me as well.
100%. And I definitely like it can sound a little bit like privileged. I mean, it is privileged, but I obviously worked in design studios and I worked in two stunning spaces with really nice interior design, quite simple, but a really beautiful space to work that was considered. And in between those two, I got poached by another place that was really fugly and horrible and like corporate kind of stuck in the 80s. And it made me so depressed. I had so much shame around it. And I gained all this weight and I was just having like the worst time. So I think when we recognize that those things are important and we start to prioritize it, it just has such a healthy flow and effect for everything else.
Yeah, exactly. I can so relate to that. Like having worked with tech companies, like some are super fancy. They're putting a lot of effort into looking good for their employees and customers as well. But there are some that's just like the 90s blinds, the carpeted floors, like barely any windows, and it's really not a good vibe working there.
That makes you really, really depressed. All right, let's jump into the next question, which is I'd love for you to tell the audience about your business. And we worked a lot on getting clarity around it. So I hope that this feels really clear and really strong for you. But what do you do and who are you for?
I have a brand and web design agency where I elevate ambitious female entrepreneurs through aesthetic and high converting design. I'm mainly working with luxury coaches. So I'm working in the high end business and life coaching industry. Most of my clients work from that. And I work with women in business who are ready to attract their most aligned high end clients as well. And they're ready to take their brand to the next level.
So they're like, they've kind of gone through the muck and they're like, I'm taking this seriously. I'm going next step, up level. Let's get the highest impact and profit and experience from this.
Yeah, so they're clients that are establishing their business and they're ready to invest and they're taking their business super seriously and they want to attract premium clients. So they want to show up as a premium brand as well.
Gorgeous. And you said something that's very, very important. You said it very quickly, and I want to go back to it. Can you please just talk a little bit more about the high converting part of what you just said?
Yeah, so when I create brands and websites, I don't just focus on the aesthetics, which obviously that's super important, but I also focus on how the user experience will be for their clients as well throughout their whole experience with their brand. Every touch point from their socials, from their websites, we really focus on how the user flows between the different areas and how it's the most easy and flawless experience for them, and they can easily sell and convert using the designs that I hand over as well.
The client has a really simple, really direct, really easeful way of making that decision and going through with that purchase.
Yes, exactly.
I just want to kind of highlight that for a second for the listeners because there are millions of graphic designers out there who don't know anything about UX, who don't have the background and the training that you have, and they can make really pretty things, but they might not even be like even thinking about how well this is going to sell, which is what Dorina means when she says highest converting. So to have someone like yourself who has all those aesthetic skills and design skills, but also has that more intricate strategic awareness is just going to skyrocket what is going to happen with that brand.
Yes, exactly. It's really important that the user knows what the next step is when they land on your website. If someone wants to buy from you, but they land on your website and they feel lost, they're probably just going to can't click out of the website and never come back. But if you have something on your website that catches their attention and guides them to the next step, whether it's a clarity call or an inquiry form or a booking engine or whatever you have, if they know that's the clear next step and they get excited about it, then you're a lot more likely to make a sale and convert those clients.
Yeah, like getting that, I think for often, especially with coaching, it's that initial conversation that people find the most difficult. So making that as easy as possible is just going to make the whole experience flow better for them.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So you're very established in this and you're very knowledgeable, but for our audience, especially maybe more beginner business owners, can you go back to layman's terms and, like, as simply as you can, explain what a brand actually is?
Yeah, for sure. So I think most people, when they think of brand, they think of the logo, the colors, the aesthetics, the visuals of a business, which is part of it. But that's not everything, not even remotely. So of course that's important. But your brand is also your identity, your voice, your personality. And it's also how your brand shows up online and in person every day. So it's every touch point that your customer has with your brand. It's or the customer has with your business, it's building your brand. So your whole customer experience, your messaging, your positioning, and the way you talk to your clients, it's all part of your brand identity and it's all building this brand for you. So brand is basically how your customer remembers you and how they recognize you and the feeling that they get when they think about your business.
It's kind of like the flavor,
Mm,
overall flavor that stays the same across all touch points.
yeah, yeah.
And I know for, like, in my business, like probably the longest, most well-established part of my brand has actually been the tone of voice.
Mm,
And I know that it's really important for that to be the same because people see my content, they know I'm no bullshit, they know I'm going to tell them straight up, they know I might be on, like, I'm less fluffy bunny, and they know that they need to expect that when they work with me. And if they don't expect that and they expect me to be fluffy bunny despite never seeing that in my content, problems will arise. So keeping that consistent across all touch points means that when we actually get to work together, we're on the exact same page and we know where we're going.
yeah, exactly. I think you nailed it with consistency. So consistency builds trust and loyalty and familiarity with your customers as well. And that's how you build a hot audience that's ready to buy from you.
And I know I talk about this a lot with my clients, but especially nowadays, I think that consistent brand is very important because the vast majority of humans, just because of, our increasingly digitized environments, are stressed, highly strung, a bit overwrought, a bit overstimulated, very, like, overwhelmed and bombarded with information. So if you can present the same thing over and over again that isn't changing, they can start to relax a little bit with you and feel a bit safer.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. So I obviously have an agenda with these questions, if anyone's listening and wondering. I do, because I have a lot of frustrating conversations with my clients trying to get them to see the importance of their brand. And it's like, there's no point doing all this work if your brand is inconsistent and all over the place or looks very unprofessional, because you're going to lose people quite immediately if that's the case. From your perspective, Dorina, why do you think small business owners should care about branding?
That's a great question. So your brand is basically what's going to attract your customers, and that it's also what's going to convert them. So it is what catches the customer's eyes, your brand at first, but it's also what builds the trust and what converts them into paying customers. So depending on how your brand shows up online, you're going to attract different kind of customers. So if you want to attract high-end premium customers, it's crucial that your brand is also positioned as that premium option.
Yeah. And I think one thing that all small business owners should think about in regards to this point is their own buying behavior. I use Peloton not necessarily because of what's included. I
Mm.
use it because of the brand. There's probably other exercise bikes and exercise memberships that have the same amount or just as much stuff included, but I'm choosing to be with Peloton because I personally really align with their vibe, their ethos, which is all part of their brand and their messaging and the way they kind of do things and the way it looks, the way it's all set up. And I think a big thing that small business owners get stuck with is they think other people care about the inclusions in their offer. But when we actually look at our own buying behavior, it actually is rarely to do with inclusions. It's more to do with alignment.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I like to build aligned brands, because a brand that's built with alignment is a brand that's built with intention, and that brand will reflect your personal and business values. And also, it's strategically created in a way that is directly speaking to your dream customers. So, if you want to be a high-end product, you have to talk to a high-end customer. And if you want to have premium clients, then you have to be positioned as the premium solution as well.
Yeah, so people recognize themselves as premium and they're not going to work with a designer who's not premium, you
Yeah.
know? So, and that goes for every single kind of business. If you recognize yourself, if you have a personal narrative about yourself, you're going to buy from brands that align with that personal narrative.
Yes, exactly.
On that topic, can you talk a little bit more about what aligned branding is and why you think it matters?
Yeah, so as I just mentioned just now, an aligned brand is basically a brand that you build with intention. So you think about your personal values, your business values, your vision and goals, and based on that, you build the brand strategically so that it's aligned with your life and your values. And on top of that, it's also created strategically to speak to your ideal clients. So every brand is basically built for two people, yourself and your ideal clients. So to build a brand for yourself, as I said, you have to align it with your values and what you want your life to look like. And then to build it for your customer, you really have to nail down who that ideal customer is, what they want, and position yourself as that vehicle of transformation for them to achieve that. So when there's a misalignment between any of these things, between your brand and your values, or the brand and the dream customers, there are two things that can happen. So if it's not aligned with your dream audience, you're not going to attract the customers that are premium, or you're not going to attract customers at all. And or you'll be frustrated and stuck with low paying, high maintenance clients that don't see the value in your service or product, and you have to convince them to buy from you. So that's one thing. Or if you have a brand that's not aligned with your values or the quality of the service that you provide, then you will feel this disconnect between your values and your quality and the brand that you're presenting online. And if you feel that disconnect, then you don't feel proud of your brand. You don't feel excited about sharing your brand online, sharing it with your customers. You don't feel confident to pitch for different opportunities. And you're just going to show up differently online because you're not fully aligned and you're not fully excited about it as well. And trust me, if the owner of the brand, the founder, the creator is not excited about the brand, and that's the way they show up online, your customers will feel it as well. So your audience won't be excited to work with you. They won't be excited to buy from you, and they'll know exactly that they're not aligned with the quality that you're putting out and the quality that they wanting to buy from.
Yeah, it's kind of like repellent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I spoke a couple of episodes ago about my experience with that and how rebranding's made me feel more confident and made me invest in a lot of different new things in my business. I think it's a really humbling moment where people have to kind of get off the hamster wheel of what they're doing and actually be very self-reflective and look at things in a really honest way. And that's usually the point where they will decide, or they'll have a coach like me go, sweetheart, like you need to get a branding designer, someone like yourself. We spoke about it a little bit then, but I'd love you to go into it a bit more. What happens when you don't actually have a brand versus when you have a proper brand?
Yeah, so when you don't have a brand or you don't have a proper brand or you DIY'd your brand, you won't have control over what kind of customers you're attracting. And in general, it will be very difficult to attract customers organically and customers that are aligned with the ideal audience that you have in mind. So without a brand, you can't build recognition and loyalty with your audience as well. And it's really hard to stand out in your field without having a brand that your customers can recognize. So know, like, and trust is a huge thing in marketing, which means that customers are more likely to purchase from a brand that they have a relationship with. But that can't happen without having an aligned brand. And when you do have a brand, it's much easier to build trust and loyalty with your customers when you keep showing up in a consistent way. You're always building a relationship with your audience. And when you have an aligned brand that's anchored in your values, your dream customers will be magnetized to your authentic brand personality. So your brand is your whole customer experience and your status as a business. And if you provide an outstanding experience and position yourself as the luxury go-to option, it will be reflected in your clients and your sales as well.
Yeah, and just before we started recording, you and I were talking about this in your own brand, how you really aligned it, got it really clean, really targeted to the ideal client that you were wanting to attract. And then you started being consistent across different platforms. So someone might find you on Instagram and go, oh, she's pretty cool. But then when they're on their Pinterest, you're popping up and they go, oh, okay. And it all looks the same. It's all aligned. They go, okay, she knows what she's doing. Let's go with her.
Yeah, consistency is huge because if you have that brand and that identity that they can recognize, then they'll see you on every platform that you're at. And if you don't have that, they might just like scan over you and don't recognize you. But if you have something that stands out to them, then wherever they go, they'd be reminded of your brand whenever they see it.
You've got that consistent visibility.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to build an aligned brand from day one or from whenever you decide that it's time to invest, is because there's like so much noise out there and you look for inspiration and you get lost in what other people are doing, what you think looks cool.
So we recently completed a 10-week intensive. I'd love to spend a minute reflecting on that and how that was for you for a moment. So first question is, what was the toughest or the hardest part of the intensive?
I still can't believe that it's over. The 10 weeks just went past so quickly. And I think the toughest part for me was, I guess, to be patient in the beginning because I was just so excited to get started and I just wanted to get everything done straight away. I just wanted to like hit the ground running and get my business going. But I think you were really good at holding that space for me to just slow down and build a business with intent. And that definitely helped me with the overwhelm that I was feeling as well and how much I felt like there was just so much to do and I didn't know where to start. And you kind of provided a structure for me and just took away the overwhelm, which was super helpful.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel like a bit slightly maybe frustrated or impatient at the start because when people work with me, we really have to go right back down to basics, get things super clear, get those foundations laid. And because I think a lot of women and people in business, when they start a business, they're trying to do all the stuff, but they've never actually sat down and been able to enunciate, exactly what they're doing, why, who it's for, and become like very clear and very confident in that. And when you do that, all of the other tasks that you then take on have so much more meaning and direction and clarity, and you'll just feel so much more in your power.
Yeah, when we started working together, I definitely didn't have the clarity that I have now, just around the target market and exactly what niche that I wanted to work with as well. And after we figured it out and really niche down and nailed it down, everything started shifting so quickly. So I think you definitely need to slow down in the beginning to go fast later on.
Yeah, and like I was saying before we jump on the call, definitely, and I see this pretty much across the board. If we generally do make quite significant changes when someone starts working with me, because if they've never had that clarity, we kind of get it and it changes things. And then there's a little bit of a magic dark period where it's like, there's crickets. But then you start to be recognized and people get what you're putting down, and then you start to pick up clients, which is what's beautifully happened for you.
Yeah, definitely. Like there was a few weeks when I was just like doing all the right things, doing all the work, nothing was happening. So like if anyone's in the same boat, just give it some time, honestly. Like I know you've told me this so many times that most people don't give it enough time and they just like chop and change and that's why things don't work. So I think just the fact that you held the space for me to implement that and just to not go crazy when something didn't happen straight away was just so helpful.
So, last couple of questions on this. What was the most powerful or beneficial part of the intensive?
I think for me was just the fact that you were so good at breaking things down to like really simple, actionable steps. So just taking away that overwhelm because I think a lot of business owners, especially when they're starting a new business, just get super overwhelmed and then they get started, try to do everything all at once, and then they can't get everything done. And so they just stop. And that's how I went into the coaching as well. I went in feeling like there were a million things to do and I had to get them done by yesterday. And when I finished the intensive, I had this like really sustainable structure set up for my business. And it felt like a really straightforward path to success if I just sat with it and followed it through.
Yeah, and running a business, being an entrepreneur, running multiple businesses, there is a million things. There's probably a billion things that you could always do all the time. And it's actually physically, humanly impossible to get them all done quickly. And you have to just choose what's the priority and move forward in knowing that you're going to get to the other things later on, rather than just getting stuck in that overwhelm and feeling like you have to overthink everything. Last thing on coaching, what would you say to anyone who's on the fence about coaching with me?
Honestly, just jump in and do it. Like, it's probably the best investment that I've made in my business so far, just because when I started working with you, I was just starting out and I really needed that like gentle structure and someone to keep me accountable and just keep me from going insane as well when I was overthinking things. So I think if you're serious about your business and you're committed to making it work, I think it's time to invest in your success as well. So I could not recommend it enough. Without this support in the initial phases, like who knows where my business would be right now or where my mindset really.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear. So I'm going to link to all things to find you and your work and how to work with you in the show notes. But how can people find you and work with you? And do you have any specific offers that you think people should kind of start out with?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at studio_rooms or on my website at studiorooms.com to find out more about my services. I'm also on TikTok and Pinterest and all the fun stuff, but I mostly just show up on Instagram daily. In terms of my offers, I have a brand alignment intensive where we build all the fundamentals for your business, building an aligned brand, nailing down your dream clients, and making sure that your business is set up for success.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. And everyone should go and check out Doreena's work. And if you're ready to up level the way that your brand and your business is showing up online, she is an incredible person who's, works in so much integrity and so much alignment. I'm sure she will be an amazing fit for so many people listening.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Thanks for having me.
If you can't tell, getting to share this time with you is something that I find truly sacred. I know that you're busy, but if you've taken anything away from our time spent together today, could you extend the love and share this episode with a friend, your community, or on your socials? Tag me so that I can see it and I can share it too. or when you have a spare moment, leave the podcast for review. These things cost you nothing and will mean so much to me. Let's get this resource into the hands of more women visionaries and help us collectively move towards our most aligned way of being and doing business together.